Hi everyone, welcome back to MindBodyFood TV. My name's Vicky, and sitting with me on the couch today is a very special guest. We have Dr. Ian Gawler. Welcome.
Nice to see you, Vicky.
Thank you very much for spending some time sitting on the couch with me. Now, Dr. Ian Gawler is author of quite a few different books, and one particular book, the latest one, is The Mind That Changes Everything. And he's actually speaking in my area this evening, and I wanted to take the opportunity to have him to come and sit and talk about one of my favourite topics, meditation, on the couch with me. So first of all, for those who don't know a little bit about your story, would you mind sharing what brought you to meditation and your 30 plus years of such a wonderful input in mind-body medicine and healing?
Thanks, Vicky. Yeah, well, actually, because of the life I had a long-term interest in things to do with philosophy and the mind, and I guess had a general interest in the truth of the matter of what it was to be a human being from quite an early age, really. Yeah. And so as I was going through school, and then I trained as a vet, but all through that time I had that interest, and I was reading books on philosophy and one thing and another. And this word meditation kept cropping up, and it sort of perplexed me a bit, because it was clear that it was made out to be something very important and useful, but nobody really defined it, and nobody really described how you did it. So It was one of those things that I always thought, at some point in my life this will be something I'll want to get more involved with, but life gets busy and one thing and another. But then when I was 24, what I thought was an athletic injury turned out to be a major bone cancer, and so I had my leg amputated, and that was a big enough deal. But then less than a year later that cancer reoccurred, and I was given a very poor prognosis, and I still thought it might be possible to survive somehow, and I was very interested in nutrition, which I know is a big part of what you've been so involved in. But also then I was very fortunate, because I was around in these pioneering days of mind-body medicine. And so when it was suggested that meditation could actually be therapeutic, it sort of awakened that long-term interest I'd had and gave it a real sort of focus. So I was very fortunate. I got introduced to meditation by Dr. Ainsley Mears, who was the real pioneer of the therapeutic use of meditation, anywhere in the world. And I was just fortunate he was living and working in Melbourne. And he'd put forward this proposition that he thought that intense meditation might actually help people with cancer to recover. So I took up on that proposition, and happily, I'm still here to talk about it. And a lot of other things happened in that process of me getting well, but I did some conventional stuff and quite a lot of the sort of natural therapies. But I think the meditation really was a mainstay. It gave me a sort of stability and a capacity to deal with the different stresses and strains of going through a major illness like that, and perhaps also have the endurance, to keep going and eventually find a way through. So when I recovered, I went back into my veterinary practice, but I just kept getting asked by people how come I was still alive. People could tell, because I'd had a leg amputated, that something pretty major had happened, and they'd inquire, and then were sort of a bit surprised to hear the story. And so in response to all those requests, in 1981 I started running groups, and initially they were cancer groups, but it became apparent very quickly that what we were helping people with cancer with was actually applicable to anybody, really, because it's like, how can you get the best out of your life? And I think for people with cancer, that means that if your system's working really well, then it's got the best potential to heal. But for people who are basically well, it's like, how can you get the best out of your physical health and your emotional health and your mind? Not everybody could learn to meditate in the way that he taught me and that I was initially teaching. So that gave me a great excuse to go and seek other meditation teachers. And I've always had a lot of respect for people who come out of authentic type traditions. So I did some Zen, I looked at some of the Hindu type things, and then I found the Tibetans. And I met up with Sylvia Rinpoche, who's one of the great Tibetan teachers, and
I'm just pulling that book. You've had some amazing teachers, and this is one of your main teachers.
Yeah, so the Tibetan Book of Living and Dying sort of is a terrific book that talks about, the real heart of what the Tibetan culture and philosophy has got to offer. And it's really a mind science. Yeah. It's really like helping us to understand how our minds work and how we can use that in a modern sort of Western context. So I sort of started in with that with this big interest in healing, but really the best way to treat an illness is not to get it,
that's right, preventative,
And so more and more I think that's where we have to focus is, how can we help people to address the way that they're living, given that what you eat and whether you exercise or not, what you drink, whether you smoke, how your emotional life's going, all those things.
And what you think as well.
And what you think.
Yeah.
Because the crucial thing is the mind, because that decides what you eat and what you drink and whether you smoke. And it's the decision maker. And if your mind's in a muddle, you can do pretty dark things. And
that's right. We react when we are feeling overwhelmed and in our head worrying about all the things that are going on external to us. That's when we often react to life instead of consciously choose how we would like to respond in the most appropriate way for us.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times too, people these days are just so busy that again the mind sort of it doesn't have a chance to think clearly.
It's overwhelmed.
It's overwhelmed, and I think it's very clear that if you're stressed in that sense, it's very easy to either underreact or overreact. Either sort of get frenetic or get depressed or lethargic or apathetic, withdrawn. And you see that in the way that people eat. That most people's eating these days is seriously affected by their state of mind and their emotional state.
Their food choices, how they eat, if they eat rushed, stressed, absent-minded, guilt-ridden, all those kinds of things. Yeah, and that creates the chemistry in their body.
So where meditation's so helpful is it gives people a chance just to sort of take some time out to sort of stand back from all the busyness, allow their mind to settle. And the lovely thing about the mind is if you give it an opportunity, it actually settles into this nice, calm and clear state. And I think when you look at the evidence, there's like over 7,000 studies in the medical literature now on the positive benefits of meditation. Both in a whole range of physical conditions and psychological conditions. If we try and understand why that's so, why it's got such a wide range of benefits, it seems to me there's two of them that are pretty obvious. The first one is this thing about it helping you to have a clearer, calmer mind and actually making good choices. So when people meditate, they start to notice, they become more aware and they start to notice the consequence of what they're doing more clearly. So, you eat something that doesn't agree with you, and if you're really busy and a bit scrambled, you just don't notice it. You just think, I haven't got time to think about that or do anything different.
I'm too busy.
Too busy. And so if you had that chance to sort of calm down, firstly you notice when you eat things that don't agree with you, and you notice the things that do agree with you, and you start to make simple choices.
Yeah, I think you're more aware of what is my body saying back to me once I've eaten this food in relation to food. Yeah,
so a lot of people sort their food out in very significant ways just by actually meditating and getting their mind more settled.
That's right, I think for me, I came to meditation when I was in my teens. And I'm very lucky because
Isn't it nice to see how many schools are bringing meditation?
I think it's absolutely wonderful, which was something that I was thinking about as you were talking, because I came to meditation very early in my teens, and I'm very blessed because I've been meditating for over 25 years. And when I think of the children that go to school these days who are under such stress, and particularly when they get to the high school years, they're on the cusp of adulthood. They're on the path to finding independence and discovering who am I. And it's being competed with the competition of fitting in and being a part of everything and wanting to be different but also wanting to belong. And I think that if children learn the skill of meditation, if they learn the ability to be aware of their emotions and their feelings and how to process them, how to allow themselves to feel, that's what feelings are for, then they would have a better chance at being able to manage their stress and be able to adapt and handle life's challenges just that little bit better. Because I'm just exposed to so many people who are in their later years, who get to the point where they're on medication, whether it's for depression or anxiety, whether they are to a point where they're feeling so lost and so overwhelmed, and they're suffering from chronic illness or disease, and they're just struggling to find something that's going to help them cope. And I find a lot of people come to meditation because they want to learn how to manage their stress. They want to learn how to relax. They want to go off medication. And I just think if children learn these skills earlier, then we might be setting ourselves up for years to come of much better health, because stress right now is our number one underlying proxy killer of all illness and disease. And that's really scary, because we've done that to ourselves as communities. And
there's a French philosopher, Pascal, who said that all of man's troubles come from having lost the ability to sit quietly in a room by himself. And it was an older time, so he could put the feminine in there as well, but you get the idea. I think for the current generation of kids, it's a real issue that they've got so much that's stimulating, and lots of it's good, but it's clearly that there's an element of that that's problematic.
It's just talking about this, it reminds me of one of the stories that you have in your book, The Mind That Changes Everything. There's a particular story in there towards the end. One of the I think it was a visualization exercise, but there was a particular gentleman that you were beautifully describing. You were teaching him how to find that space between their thoughts. And you wrote that he stood up and he described an incident or a memory from childhood of a train set, and the links between the train carriages were the space between the thoughts, and how he equated that to finding his joy, and the little links were starting to evaporate into a cloud, I think, from memory. And when I read that, I thought that's so beautiful that he could use a memory from childhood to help him find that inner peace or joy or wonder or stillness that is always with us. No matter where we are, it's always there. It's just that we get so overwhelmed by external noise that we often forget that inner stillness is always with us. We just have to tap into it and train our minds to become more aware of it.
I think that story sort of really was highlighting the fact that the mind has these two aspects. It does have the active thinking mind, which is busy all the time, and he was equating that to like carriages on a train that's just sort of endlessly rushing by. But then the mind also has this deeper stillness. And for him, the metaphor that came was the idea that the links between the carriages separated, so that instead of having just a constant parade of carriages going by, there was sort of like one would come by which is like a thought, and then there'd be like a gap which revealed this stillness. The other metaphor that we use for that, which is very good, is like the blue sky and the clouds. Because in that sense, the sky's got those two aspects. It's got the blue sort of infinite stillness of the big blue sky,